People like you always think you belong everywhere, the nurse said, her voice cutting clean through the fluorescent hum of the emergency room. And for a moment, the air seemed to tighten around the words as if even the machines were listening, as if the walls themselves leaned in to watch what would happen next, and Ava Reynolds didn't respond. Not right away. She just stood there beside the hospital bed, her worn gray hoodie slightly damp from the mist outside, her hands still, her eyes steady on the patient's monitor where the green line pulsed too fast, too sharp, each beep slicing through the noise like a warning no one else seemed to hear. And around her the ER moved in controlled chaos, carts rolling, rubber saws squeaking against polished tile, voices overlapping in clipped urgency, but none of it touched her, not the noise, not the glances, not even the quiet chuckles that followed the nurse's remark, because Ava wasn't looking at them. She was watching the numbers climb. 118, 126, 132, her gaze narrowing just slightly as if the truth was already forming in her mind before anyone else could see it. And the nurse, Kelly Whitman, adjusted her gloves with practiced precision, her posture sharp, confident, the kind that came from years of being obeyed without question. She didn't look at Ava again, not really, just dismissed her with the smallest flick of her hand like clearing space on a cluttered counter. Family members wait outside, she added, already. Turning back to her chart, already deciding what mattered and what didn't. And Ava exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that didn't ask permission, didn't seek approval, just existed, grounded and quiet, her fingers brushing lightly against the cold metal rail of the bed as the patient shifted, a faint groan escaping his lips, almost lost beneath the steady rhythm of machines. And for a split second, the overhead lights reflected in her eyes, sharp white against deep brown, revealing something the room hadn't noticed yet, something that didn't belong to hesitation or uncertainty, something that felt older, heavier, earned. But still, she said nothing, not yet, because timing mattered, because truth, when spoken too early, often sounded like noise, and the monitor beeped again, faster now, the rhythm uneven. And Ava tilted her head just slightly, listening not just with her ears, but with something deeper, something instinctive, as if she had heard this pattern before, as if she knew exactly where it would lead. And still the room carried on, unaware, unbothered, convinced it was under control, while the seconds stretched thin and fragile between what was happening and what was about to happen. And Ava finally lifted her gaze, not to the nurse, not to the staff, but to the door at the far end of the ER. Her expression unchanged, calm, patient, as if she wasn't waiting to be acknowledged, but waiting for the moment everything would have no choice but to change. The monitor let out a sharper tone, not loud enough to alarm the room, but wrong enough to feel out of place. And Ava's eyes did not leave the numbers as they climbed past 135 beats per minute, the rhythm tightening like a thread pulled too far. And she leaned in slightly, her voice calm, measured. His pressure is dropping. You are missing something. But Kelly did not even look up this time, flipping a page on her chart with a quick, practiced motion. I said wait outside. She replied, her tone flatter now, more dismissive than before, and one of the younger nurses glanced over with a half-smile that faded almost immediately, unsure whether to keep watching or look away. And Ava straightened. Her shoulders relaxed, her expression unchanged, as if the words had passed through her without resistance. And she shifted her gaze back to the patient, noting the shallow rise of his chest, the faint tension in his jaw, the subtle signs that rarely made it into charts but always told the truth. And for a moment the room seemed to stretch around her, every sound slightly delayed, the rolling carts, the distant call for supplies, the low murmur of voices blending into a dull background hum. And she took one slow breath, steady and controlled, the kind that anchored everything else in place, because she had seen this before, not once, not twice, but enough times to know exactly how quickly things could turn. And still she waited, not out of hesitation, but because she understood something the others did not. That timing was everything. That stepping in too early would only make them push back harder, dismiss faster, close themselves off to the truth standing right in front of them. And Kelly adjusted the intravenous line with efficient movements, her confidence unshaken, her attention fixed on the routine she trusted. And the patient shifted again, a faint sound escaping him, almost. Like a question that no one answered. And Ava's gaze softened for just a fraction of a second, not with uncertainty, but with recognition, as if she understood what he could not say. And then the monitor stuttered, just briefly, a skipped beat that snapped the rhythm off balance. And one of the nurses finally frowned, glancing at the screen. "Is that normal?" she asked quietly, but Kelly waved it off, already moving to another task. "It is fine, keep moving." And the room obeyed, because that was how it worked. Authority was rarely questioned, especially when it sounded confident, and Ava's fingers curled slightly at her sides, not tense, not angry, just ready, as if every part of her was aligned for something that had not happened yet, but was already inevitable. And her eyes lifted once more toward the far door, the one that led deeper into the hospital, where decisions carried more weight, where names meant something. And for the first time, there was the faintest shift in her expression, not doubt, not frustration, but patience reaching its edge, because the moment she had been waiting for was no longer approaching. It was arriving. The alarm tone did not spike into panic, but it changed just enough to cut through the routine, a sharper edge in the sound that made one of the nurses pause mid-step, her hand hovering over a tray. And this time the hesitation lingered a second longer than before. "Something is off," she murmured, quieter now, uncertain, and Kelly exhaled through her nose, impatience flickering across her face as she turned back toward the monitor, her eyes scanning the numbers with a confidence that had not yet cracked. "It is just fluctuation. Keep the line steady," she said, but the words did not land the same way they had moments ago, not with the same weight, not with the same certainty, and Ava saw it, that almost invisible shift, the first hairline fracture in a system built on assumption, and she stepped closer, not abruptly, not forcefully, but with a quiet presence that seemed to settle into the space whether it was invited or not. Her voice low but clear. "Check his abdomen. There is pressure building." And this time the room did not laugh. No one smiled, because the monitor pulsed again, faster, uneven, the green line trembling in a way that no longer looked harmless. And Kelly's jaw tightened as she reached for the chart again, flipping pages faster now, scanning for something that should already be there, something that would explain what she was seeing without needing to admit she had missed it. And the younger nurse stepped in hesitantly, placing a hand near the patient's side, her expression shifting as she pressed lightly. "There is resistance," she said, her voice no longer casual, and the words hung there, heavy, undeniable, and for a brief moment, everything slowed, the sounds of the emergency room pulling back into a distant echo as the realization began to form, incomplete, but growing. And Ava did not move, did not push. She simply watched, her eyes steady, her posture unchanged, as if she had already walked this path and knew exactly where it led. And then the doors at the far end burst open with urgency that could not be ignored, footsteps fast, voices sharper, a doctor entering with a tablet in hand, scanning the room in a single sweeping motion. "We have a complication incoming. Where is the lead on this case?" he called out, his tone cutting through the hesitation like a blade through fog. And Kelly straightened immediately, stepping forward, ready to respond, ready to reassert control. But before the words could fully leave her mouth, the doctor's gaze shifted, landing on Ava, not by accident, not by confusion, but with recognition that did not belong to chance. And something in the room shifted all at once, subtle but undeniable, like a current changing direction, and Ava met his eyes. Without hesitation, without explanation, and in that silent exchange, something passed between them that no one else understood yet. Something that made the air feel different, heavier, charged with a truth that was no longer waiting to be discovered but about to reveal itself whether the room was ready or not. The doctor's eyes stayed on Ava for a fraction longer than necessary, just enough to make the room feel it, just enough to unsettle the balance that had held everything together moments ago. And Kelly noticed it, the hesitation, the shift in attention that was not supposed to happen, her voice tightening as she stepped forward. "I am leading this case," she said quickly, almost too quickly, as if speed alone could reclaim control. But the doctor did not respond to her right away, his gaze flicking once more toward Ava, searching, confirming, and Ava gave the smallest nod, not dramatic, not demanding, just certain, And then everything moved at once, the doctor turning back to the patient, his tone changing, sharper now. We need imaging now. Prepare for internal assessment. And suddenly the room responded differently, faster, more precise, as if a new rhythm had taken over, one that did not rely on assumption but on something more grounded. And Kelly's hands paused for a split second before she resumed, but the confidence in her movements was no longer seamless. There was a slight hesitation, a recalculation that had not been there before, and Ava stepped closer to the bedside, her presence no longer ignorable, her voice calm but firm. There is fluid buildup. It is pressing against the organs. That is why his vitals are unstable. And this time no one dismissed her. No one laughed, because the evidence was unfolding in real time. The monitor continuing its uneven pattern, the patient's breathing shallow, the signs aligning one by one, and the younger nurse looked between Ava and Kelly, uncertainty written clearly across her face, unsure which direction to follow. And that uncertainty spread, subtle but real, like a ripple through the room, and Kelly straightened again, forcing her posture back into place. "We are handling it," she said, but the words lacked their earlier weight, sounding more like reassurance than authority. And Ava did not argue, did not challenge. She simply reached for the chart, her fingers steady as she turned it toward the doctor, pointing to a section that had been overlooked, her voice even. "This was noted earlier, but not followed up. It aligns with what we are seeing now." And the doctor's eyes moved quickly across the page, his expression tightening as understanding settled in, and he gave a short nod. "Good catch," he said, not loudly, not for show, but enough for the room to hear, enough to shift the center of gravity once more. And Kelly felt it, the quiet acknowledgement that did not belong to her, the recognition redirecting itself without warning. And for the first time, she looked directly at Ava, really looked, not at the hoodie, not at the surface, but at the composure, the clarity, the way she stood without needing to prove anything. And something in Kelly's expression faltered, not fully, not yet, but enough to crack the certainty she had held on to since the beginning. And Ava met her gaze without hostility, without triumph, just steady, grounded, as if this moment was not about being right, but about what needed to be done next. And the room continued to move, faster now, more focused, but underneath it all, there was a growing awareness, quiet but undeniable, that the person they had dismissed minutes ago was not who they thought she was, and that realization was no longer approaching slowly. It was already here, pressing in from all sides, waiting to be fully seen. The room no longer felt controlled. It felt tight, like everything was holding its breath at once, and the monitor's uneven rhythm pressed into the silence between movements, each sound sharper now, harder to ignore. And Ava stood at the center of it without stepping forward, without raising her voice, her presence steady in a way that did not demand attention but took it anyway. And the doctor moved quickly beside her, issuing instructions that carried weight. "Get the imaging team on standby. Prepare for immediate intervention," his tone leaving no space for delay. And this time no one questioned, no one hesitated, because something had shifted beyond hierarchy, beyond routine, something rooted in certainty rather than assumption. And Kelly felt it more than anyone. The ground beneath her authority no longer solid, her hands moving faster now, but less fluid. The precision she relied on breaking into small, almost invisible pauses, and she glanced again at Ava, searching for something to hold on to, some explanation that would return things to how they were just minutes ago. But Ava did not offer one. She did not explain herself, did not correct, did not accuse. She simply reached toward the patient's side, her movements careful, controlled, confirming what she already knew, and her voice followed, calm but undeniable. "We are running out of time to stabilize him without escalation." And the words landed heavier than anything spoken before, not dramatic, not loud, but final in a way that made the room respond instantly. And the younger nurse stepped in closer, her earlier uncertainty replaced with urgency, her eyes moving between Ava and the monitor, aligning with the rhythm Ava had already understood. And Kelly inhaled sharply, forcing herself to step back into control. "We are not escalating yet," she said, but the words felt thinner now, stretched, as if even she could hear the doubt underneath them. And the doctor's gaze shifted toward her, not confrontational, but questioning. A silent recalibration of who was leading and who was following, and that moment lingered. Just long enough to be felt by everyone in the room. The unspoken tension rising like pressure before a storm, and Ava did not look at Kelly, did not engage in the conflict. Her focus never leaving the patient, her hands steady, her posture unchanged, as if she had already moved past the need for permission. And then the monitor spiked again, sharper this time, the rhythm breaking further, and the room reacted instinctively. Voices rising, movements accelerating, the fragile balance tipping into something more urgent, more real, and Ava finally stepped fully into motion, not abruptly, not forcefully, but with a quiet authority that filled the space without asking, her voice cutting clean through the noise. We escalate now. And for a second, just 1 second, no one moved, because the command had not come from where they expected, had not come from the person they had been listening to. And Kelly froze, her expression tightening as the reality of that moment settled in. The shift complete, undeniable, and the doctor nodded once, immediate, decisive. "Do it," he said. And just like that, the room obeyed. Not because they were told to, but because something deeper had aligned, something that could no longer be ignored. And Ava remained exactly where she was, steady, composed, as if this had always been the direction things were going. As if the only difference now was that everyone else had finally caught up to the truth she had seen from the very beginning. The shift happened without a sound, not a single word announcing it, just the quiet alignment of movement as the room began to follow a different center. And Ava stood still for a breath longer, letting the urgency settle into something controlled, something precise, her eyes scanning the patient with a focus that cut through the noise like a steady beam of light. And around her the staff moved faster now, but not chaotically, not blindly, their actions tightening into rhythm, guided by something they did not fully understand yet, but trusted enough to follow. And the monitor continued its uneven pattern, but there was a change in the way it was being watched. No longer ignored, no longer background noise, every fluctuation now carrying weight. And Ava stepped closer, her hand hovering just above the patient's side, not touching, just reading, sensing, confirming. Her voice low but clear. "Maintain pressure control. Do not let it spike again." And the younger nurse nodded immediately, adjusting her position without hesitation, her earlier doubt replaced with a quiet confidence borrowed from Ava's certainty. And Kelly remained where she was, her posture still upright, but no longer anchored, her eyes moving between the monitor, the doctor, and Ava, trying to reconcile what she was seeing with what she believed to be true. And for the first time, she did not speak, not because she had nothing to say, but because the words no longer felt sufficient, no longer carried the authority they once did. And the doctor moved in closer beside Ava, his tone measured, aligned. "We are stabilizing, but we need to confirm the source." And Ava gave a slight nod, already ahead of the thought, already tracing the path forward. "It is contained for now, but not for long," she replied, her voice steady, grounded in something deeper than assumption. And the room seemed to lean into that steadiness, the tension, shifting from uncertainty to focus, from reaction to intention. And for a moment, everything slowed again, not in chaos, but in clarity, each movement deliberate, each sound purposeful. And Ava's gaze lifted briefly, catching the reflection of the overhead lights in the glass panel across the room, her own image faint but present, layered over the controlled motion behind her. And there was no triumph in her expression, no satisfaction, just a quiet resolve, as if this moment was not about proving anything, but about fulfilling something that had always been expected of her. And Kelly watched that reflection too, though she did not realize it at first, her eyes drawn not to Ava directly, but to the stillness she carried in the middle of everything that was moving. And something shifted inside her then, subtle but undeniable, a recognition not of status, not of title, but of presence, of capability, of something she had dismissed without understanding. And she took a small step forward, almost unconsciously, her voice softer now, uncertain in a way it had never been before. "What do you need?" she asked, the words leaving her before she could stop them. And the room seemed to pause just enough to feel it, the question not just heard, but understood for what it meant. And Ava turned her head slightly, meeting Kelly's gaze without judgment, without hesitation, and answered simply, "Focus." And in that single word, the tension eased just enough to let the work continue, not as separate actions, but as something unified, something aligned, and the moment held, quiet and steady, as the next phase approached, carrying with it a truth that had not yet been spoken aloud, but was already changing everything. The room held its breath without knowing it, every movement continuing, but softer now, more deliberate, as if something unseen had stepped into place and demanded attention without raising its voice. And Ava remained at the bedside, her posture unchanged, her focus unwavering, while the monitor began to settle into a more stable rhythm, not perfect, not yet, but no longer spiraling. Each beep spacing out just enough to signal that control had been regained, at least for the moment, and the doctor exhaled quietly, a tension leaving his shoulders that had not been visible until it was gone. "We are stabilizing," he said, his tone lower now, grounded, and the staff moved with renewed precision, adjusting lines, confirming readings, their actions no longer reactive but intentional, and Kelly stood just behind them, watching, her earlier certainty replaced by something quieter, heavier, her eyes no longer scanning for mistakes in others, but searching for understanding within herself. And Ava reached for the chart again, flipping it open with practiced ease, her fingers moving to the same section she had pointed out before, and she spoke without looking up. This should have been flagged during intake, her voice even, not accusatory, just factual, and the doctor nodded once, following her line of thought. "It was missed," he admitted, not defensively, but as a simple truth. And that admission landed differently than anything else that had been said, because it shifted the weight of the moment away from assumption and into accountability. And Kelly felt it, the quiet realization pressing in, not loud, not public, but undeniable, and she stepped forward slowly, her voice measured, careful. "I reviewed that intake," she said, the words steady but carrying a different kind of weight now. And for a brief second, the room seemed to pause again, not in tension, but in recognition of what that meant. And Ava finally looked at her, really looked, her expression calm, open, without judgment, and there was no triumph there, no satisfaction, just acknowledgement, as if the truth itself was enough. And Kelly held that gaze for a moment longer than she intended. Something unspoken passing between them, something that had nothing to do with titles or roles, and everything to do with seeing clearly for the first time. And then the doctor straightened, glancing between them before turning toward the door. "We need to update the board immediately," he said, his tone shifting again, formal now, official, and he reached for the phone clipped at his side, speaking into it with urgency that carried beyond the room. "Notify administration, Chief Reynolds is already on site." And the words landed like a quiet detonation, not loud, not chaotic, but absolute in their impact. And the room froze, not physically, but internally, every movement slowing just enough to feel the meaning settle in. And Kelly's eyes widened slightly, the pieces aligning all at once, the presence, the certainty, the way Ava had never hesitated, never needed permission. And she looked back at Ava again, but this time not searching, not questioning, just seeing. And Ava did not react to the announcement, did not shift her posture or her tone. She simply returned her attention to the patient, her voice steady as she gave the next instruction. "Maintain current levels. We are not finished yet." As if the title had changed nothing about what mattered most. And in that moment, the truth fully revealed itself, not through words, but through the quiet authority she had carried from the very beginning. The kind that did not need to be declared to be real. The words lingered in the air long after they were spoken, not loud, not repeated, but impossible to ignore. And the room adjusted around them in subtle ways, posture straightening, movements becoming more deliberate, voices lowering just enough to reflect a shift that no one needed to announce again. And Ava continued, as if nothing had changed, her attention anchored to the patient, her hands steady as she guided the next steps, her voice calm. "Keep the levels consistent, do not overcorrect." And the staff responded instantly, not out of obligation, but out of trust that had formed in the span of minutes. And the monitor held its rhythm, not perfect, but stable enough to breathe between each sound. And the doctor stepped back slightly, watching her work with a quiet respect that did not need to be spoken. and Kelly remained where she was, her hands still, her eyes fixed on Ava, not with disbelief anymore, but with something deeper, something heavier, as if she was replaying every moment that had just passed, every word she had said, every assumption she had made, and for the first time, there was no defense forming in her mind, no justification, just clarity settling in piece by piece, and she took a slow step forward, the movement small but deliberate, her voice quieter than it had been all day. "Dr. Reynolds," she said, the title careful on her tongue, unfamiliar in its weight, and Ava turned slightly, acknowledging her without breaking focus, without changing the rhythm of what she was doing, and Kelly hesitated for a fraction of a second before continuing. "I misread the intake. I should have caught it." The words coming out steady but stripped of the confidence they once carried, replaced instead by something honest, something unguarded, and the room did not react. No one turned, no one commented, but the moment was felt all the same, because it was not about being heard, it was about being true, and Ava looked at her fully now, her expression unchanged, calm, steady, not cold, not warm, just present, and for a brief second, the noise of the room faded again, leaving only the space between them, and she gave a small nod, not as approval, not as dismissal, but as acknowledgement. And then she spoke, her voice even, grounded. "What matters is that we see it now," and there was no edge in her tone, no lesson wrapped in the words, just a simple truth that settled into the space without resistance. And Kelly exhaled slowly, something in her shoulders releasing, not completely, but enough to shift the weight she had been carrying, and she stepped into motion again, this time not leading, not resisting, but aligning, her hands moving with renewed focus, her attention fixed where it needed to be, and the room followed that alignment, each person adjusting in their own way, not because they were told to, but because the direction was clear now, undeniable, and Ava returned. Her full attention to the patient, her presence steady as ever, guiding without force, leading without announcement, and the moment held, quiet and strong, as the work continued, not as separate roles, not as divided authority, but as something unified, something built not on status, but on clarity, on humility, on the simple act of seeing what was right in front of them, and choosing to respond to it with truth. The rhythm of the monitor steadied into something almost quiet, each beep spaced, with enough certainty to no longer command attention, and the room slowly exhaled without realizing it had been holding its breath, movements softening, voices lowering, the urgency dissolving into controlled routine, and Ava stepped back half a pace, not leaving the space, just allowing it to settle without her at the center, her eyes still on the patient for one final moment before she nodded once, satisfied, not with pride, but with completion, and the doctor beside her gave a small acknowledgement in return, his tone calm. "He is stable now," and the words carried through the room like a quiet release, and one by one, the staff returned to their stations, their tasks shifting from crisis to care, but the atmosphere did not return to what it had been before. Something had changed, something that could not be undone, and Kelly remained still for a moment longer, watching Ava as she stepped away from the bedside, her hoodie catching the overhead light in soft folds, her presence no longer blending into the background but standing clearly within it. And Kelly's gaze followed her, not out of confusion now, but out of understanding that had arrived too late to prevent the moment, but not too late to learn from it. And Ava moved toward the hallway without announcing herself, without gathering attention, her steps measured, quiet against the polished floor, and as she passed the glass panel near the exit, the reflection caught her just right, the overhead lights framing her silhouette, and beneath the edge of her hoodie, just visible for a brief second, was the badge clipped at her side, clean, understated, but unmistakable in its authority, the engraved name catching the light, before disappearing again as she continued forward, and behind her, the room carried on, but not the same way, not with the same assumptions, not with the same blind certainty. And Kelly turned back to the patient, her hands moving with renewed care, her focus sharper, her awareness deeper, and for a moment, she paused, her fingers resting lightly against the chart, her eyes lowering as if seeing it for the first time, really seeing it. And then she adjusted her grip, straightened her posture, and continued, not as she had before, but differently, more deliberate, more present, and down the hallway. Ava did not look back, did not slow, her figure moving steadily toward the next set of doors, the next responsibility waiting beyond them. And as the doors opened automatically, the light shifted again, brighter, wider, and she stepped through without hesitation, her presence carrying forward into whatever came next, leaving behind a silence that was not empty, but full of realization, of change, of something that lingered long after she was gone, something that did not need words to be understood, because it had already been seen, already been felt, and would not be forgotten.